All set, Marty.
It's now 7:36. I'm going to call, we have a quorum. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all for being here. I was getting nervous about ever having a quorum again. But it was, I appreciate it. First, and am I supposed to deal with that now or later?
No, later.
Now I guess I have to share.
I mean, you can, but it's fine.
Taking notes tonight. I can take them if you want, Jessica, but can I borrow your computer?
I thought you were carrying the... No, you're right. I don't take the best notes, but I'll
But
take
I'm
it.
happy to do it, I don't have a computer with me.
Okay, I do have my computer, no problem.
So it's now 7:38.
Oh, God, Lord.
And I call the meeting to order. The agenda is, it's on.
Done?
The agenda is listed here, plus a few other things. First thing we start with is the approval of the minutes. Minutes to approve. If you want to do one at a time. I do recall,
Make a motion, do all three at once.
was saying that, I believe in the October minutes, there was a request for a change, which shows up, which I corrected when I sent it out. It came from Rosemary, and it'll also be in tonight's discussion. So there is January, everyone's happy. There's not January, it couldn't be January. There is October, and there is November, there is December. And having said all that, I heard a motion.
I make a motion all three be done as a single vote.
Okay, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so all three are approved, and I thank you just for getting that done. Here's report.
Sorry, Marty, to bother you, but I just don't see any indication of recording.
Over at the bottom, your screen is sharing, and there's a little dot, the cloud dot.
Oh, this is the recording?
I'm not too sure, but that's the only indication that I see.
Artie?
Is this recording to the cloud? Is that what
Yeah,
that is?
yeah, it
Okay.
should be.
Because usually it's a red
Yeah,
circle up in the left, that's why. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I can check.
Fine.
probably a new update, but.
Yeah, it's
there.
recording.
Okay. I know what to look for that now.
Okay,
Not aware.
so we did the minutes. Now, Chair's report. Polling, I think I've beaten this up to death. Time to quit. Can we poll people who abstain? I asked, Alex, who will be at our meeting tomorrow night, and he gave me this response, and, basically says that he's not giving me any reference to say it's a good idea or a bad idea. It's just
Not his job.
not his job, and he is not, okay, so, and besides, after watching the last few votes, community board, taken between people who are present and people who are on Zoom, it's pretty difficult as it is. To then start polling strikes me as, this is dead issue. Unless someone wants to bring it back to life.
I won't bring back the question.
We're polling.
One issue is whether it makes any sense as a matter of moral suasion to have the chair make an announcement, at the beginning of a meeting, some meetings, all meetings, that, part of joining the community board is taking a position on things which come before the board, and that while there are always reasons for, there may always be a legitimate reason for abstaining, being undecided is not one of those reasons. Being unsure that you know enough about the issue is generally not one of those reasons. And not paying attention is a bad reason. Wonder if that makes sense
I'll
to...
think about that for tomorrow night. It's worthy of bringing up. To me, it's troublesome when a vote comes in and the number of abstentions is so great that it neither passes nor fails. It fails because of the abstentions, but, that troubles me. Item which will come up at tomorrow night's meeting, Article 3, Section 4, which I personally don't think we should have been involved in. I think the borough president should have taken care of it. We have a board member who was appointed this year and is yet to be seen. According to the bylaws, you mix X number of meetings, community board meetings or committee meetings. You can be voted to be removed from the board. Again, I think it's the borough president who should have done that, since that was the appointee, appointer. At any rate, this individual they've attempted to contact this individual by phone, by email, by pigeon.
Certified letter, right?
Yeah.
We'll get to that. The borough president has made attempts. The council member who made the recommendations to the borough president has tried to contact this person and has not been able to do so. So this person received, based on last month's executive board meeting, I got a 20-day letter which said if you do not respond, or a 30-day letter, if you do not respond by our next meeting, it's going to be on the agenda, and it will be on the agenda tomorrow night, leaving us with two options. This person, well, actually, there are three options. This person was asked, if you cannot attend or whatever, you want to resign from the board, and then there'd be no resolution. That has not taken place. Second option is this person does not show up tomorrow, because that's their right to defend themselves in executive session. And if that person does not show up, then the full board and exec could and would probably vote to remove this person from the board. And the third option is this person shows up with a fantastic story. Now, if it's really fantastic, like they were in a NASA ship and therefore incommunicado, we might honor the person and say, okay, that makes sense. But short of that, I'm not sure what the board might consider to say, well, that makes sense. So that's tomorrow night. I saw a hand. So I
Yeah. So how soon do we need to wait? I feel like both balls should be rolling, like the removal of the board member that hasn't been present, and also for us to discuss who would be replacing them, so there's no gap.
No.
That doesn't happen simultaneously?
The borough
Is there a
president
reason why
appoints-
not?
The borough president appoints. It's not in our control
We
at
have
all.
No business whatsoever in saying who should
No, not
become on the
but
board.
that the process has begun.
No.
Oh, I see.
Well,
So then we would be
the
short
VPs.
a person in the community board, no?
Oh, we're short right now?
Because they're not showing up, right,
I
right.
don't think we have our full 50. So that's another issue, but the BP, it's all in the BP's hands.
Understood.
I don't understand your notations here. You underscore appointed member shall be initiated. You're talking about, is that new text? Is that?
No, that's exactly from the bylaws, Article 3, Section 4.
All right, then you're just trying to highlight it.
Right, emphasize
All
that.
right, or emphasize it. Can you just underscore a proceeding to remove appointed member?
Yeah, that's a good idea. This is not a document that will be.
No, but,
circulated.
you're probably gonna present it tomorrow, right?
Right.
That should be as well.
The resolution was sent to us. It's
I
in
saw this resolution. Can we vote on it today? Like,
No, we don't vote.
we vote tomorrow?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
The jury is the full
So what
board.
you're pointing to is.
Right, it's already in there and there's no emphasis in the resolution, right,
Mhm.
okay.
This is a non-issue. Question was raised, who remembers what the process is for naming a community member to a community board committee? And all of us old-timers remembered what it was, sorry,
Mhm.
what it was, but couldn't find it in writing. I asked Sarah to leave the book for me tonight. I don't see it, but it's in writing, it's in the handbook, it is very, exact. This section right here, Rosemary sent to me, which is from the minutes of 2014, when Rosemary was chair of the LRE, and there were the people who voted, and so at least from that date, the rule has existed. In order for a committee member, a community member to be appointed to a board committee, they must attend 3 consecutive meetings, and the determination of the chair of the committee that this is not a one-issue person. So if they want to get involved because they want to see reservoir, whatever, and that's one issue. They're interested in the subject. They're interested in the subject, and that doesn't matter, and the chairman will, the chairperson of the committee will then ask the chairperson of the board whether or not this person can be appointed. Chairperson of the board will make the appointment. The only difference is at the end of the year, technically that person's term of office is over at the end of the June. But the following September, chairperson of the committee says that person was a great member, want to have them back, and that it doesn't require the 3 consecutive meetings.
Marty, my apologies, I wanted to mention something with regard to the removal of the member, because there may be a question tomorrow. Someone may say something to the effect of, I've been a member of the board for X years, I don't remember a situation in which we had a vote to remove someone.
We never do.
That's why they might say it. And I think that one thing, at least the way that I not interpret the words, but rather the spirit of how it's being used this time, is that it's not a punishment for breaking the rules. What this is a way of preserving the board's ability to achieve a quorum. That is the main event here, it seems to me, or at least, yeah. So I think that's one way of explaining that.
I think the other question is that a person appointed to the board should be a working member of the board. And this person, for whatever reason, cannot attend meetings or participate, and in theory, there's room for somebody else to join be appointed to the board.
In the future, yeah.
Or tomorrow, because let us know who the person is. Good, bad, or indifferent, we have no idea.
No, but it doesn't matter. The point is, if you're violating the rule and you're doing so in an extreme fashion, which this is, you know, one could say, well, that's the rule and the person isn't fulfilling their responsibilities. Right. Boom. Why hasn't that ever happened? Of course, there have been people who've probably missed 6 meetings or whatever in history, many, in fact. And I think the answer is that because this person hasn't been reachable, it's not something that can ever be cured, and this is really just a housekeeping matter of just preserving the board's ability to achieve a quorum. Anyway.
David asked 2 months ago, I believe, whether or not we should require community members to leave their videos on during the course of a Zoom attendance. And I think Rosemary solved that problem by saying, hey, they don't even have to sign in.
That's true.
Under the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But if you attend a meeting in person, it's there.
true.
So I'd never say anything about signing in, but I think that, for example, who the hell is iPhone? Who the hell is Wellington? I think that the people who, if you want to participate,
Say that.
if you were attending in person, we would see your face.
part of it comes from the Zoom bombing we had. If somebody, displays themselves, and then tries to bomb us later, we've seen them, and we will have a picture of them. But partially, it's that if you're a member of the community, or if you're interested in our community, you should be present. I think you should sign in, but that's not the rule. Fine, I'm okay with that.
I think that was very clear that we don't have, I don't think we have the power to enforce that, or at this point, that
Why not?
should be tried.
What do you mean we don't? Why not? We can establish
The criteria by which one participates in our meeting.
I wanna be the, only naysayer.
Well, I'll be the naysay, if it, then let's, we've talked about this issue how many times?
We have.
Well, we brought it up.
Many times,
Yeah.
so put it to a vote. I mean, I object to it, and
Well, why?
Well, right, are we gonna propose a
I don't know, but this
I
issue
agree, it
has
keeps
to be
coming up and we have no action.
Exactly.
I 100% agree.
More resolutions,
Exactly.
need to know the position of the members of the committee.
Okay.
Right, and I would like to say that, on this issue, that, it is absolutely correct. I mean, that if someone is in person, there's no issue because they're in person. And the fact is that Zoom creates an issue which wasn't there. And Zoom is new, and we have the ability to adopt procedures like having EC or not, at least within the bounds of the law. And I think that we probably could, if we're going to modify or scrap our procedures, make that a requirement. I think we could. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but I think that that is not, beyond the bounds of setting those procedures in that thing that we vote on.
So I have a question, 'cause like, what about people who maybe don't have a camera or don't have a working camera, right? At what point are we not allowing them to participate in the meeting or hear it live in order to process the discussions and everything like that? I feel like, you know, we could be in an icky place that way. And that's my opinion.
That's a fair point, which I'd rather defer until we decide whether we want people to, show their faces. I mean, the person who can't, well, do we think it's appropriate for the community to know who is participating in their meetings? By,
I think the sign-in is the right answer, but
Yeah,
why,
but-
but we can't do it?
apparently we can't. I don't
It's
know.
crazy.
And secondarily, what happens to the person who has something cogent to say and doesn't wanna show themselves? We block them?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
right,
If you're not willing to walk into the meeting room to, express your opinion, which is, you know, when we're at the Y or the school or whatever, well, then you can't participate. In a similar fashion, if you're not willing to be recognized as a member of the community in some fashion, no, I don't think you deserve the right to, give your opinion. You know, it's sort of like the anonymity of the internet. I think that's a real problem. You know, people who do dastardly things on the internet, that's a problem. Whereas if you had to post your despicable sign in the village square, you could be seen doing that. But with the internet and, the ability to hide yourself, that's a problem. And the same thing here is, if you're a member of the community or you want to be a member of the community, you should speak your, piece and you should be willing to present yourself. We don't require you to identify your name.
Or take a poll of those here. Julie has something to say?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to just mention two things. One meeting in person many years ago with the public safety, we used to put people's first names on the sign-in sheet, and we had a speaker talking about domestic violence, and we had a lady in the audience who did not want to even have her initials on the page because she was a victim. And I remember after that, we just started putting first initials on the sign-in page. We wouldn't make people write their full name. And she was nervous. And then recently, I want to say maybe about 2 months ago, in the health and hospital meeting, Rabbi Kaplan, I think they were discussing depression. It was a very heavy evening. And we had somebody on Zoom, he wouldn't show his face, and he spoke. I think if Laura's there, she would remember. It would have broke your heart if you heard what he had to say. And if he had to show his face, he would not have said half the things he said. It's still on Zoom. So having to force someone to show their face, sometimes it's not in the best interest of the person. It's good that they're able to get the information that the community board gives out. And Rabbi Kaplan's meeting recently was just heartbreaking when you heard this person talk, and he was in the military and he had a lot of issues. So I just wanted to say that. I'm not taking any side now until we vote, but I really needed just to say that.
Right. I'd like to move it. There are
Yes.
more important subjects tonight. So David, if you have something,
Yeah, I think we should separate the exceptions from the rule. I'm very sympathetic to the example that Julie just gave. I'm sympathetic to those who don't have, a camera on their phone or their computer. Fine, let's figure out a way to work it. But I think it's in the interest of the community that generally, in most cases, these few exceptions aside, I think it's in our best interest that we know who, is speaking or can identify them. And the Zoom bombing is, just an added issue with it. But I think that we should do that and then figure out how to address the exceptions.
I think one compromise, just I'd throw out there briefly, is if someone is going to just want to observe in the new Zoom world, you know, where it's very easy, that they don't have to identify themselves and show their face. They're gathering information, they're, in that sense. If they want to speak and participate along the lines of what David said about, you know, like a hateful sign in the world, you sort of have to step up if you want to take responsibility. So I think that's a fair compromise. Don't participate, don't show your face, that's cool. If you're going to speak, you must show your face, and if you don't.
In theory, you
I'm in
can't speak
support
at
of
a
the
meeting.
compromise.
I'm gonna ask for a poll now. All those who think we should impose a rule of this type, please identify yourself. Three. All those who don't think we should impose such a rule? Both votes. But at least there were no abstentions.
Wait, so just, okay, so we're just voting to not impose a rule.
Correct.
Okay, so we move on. So we should not bring it up ever again,
What was
right?
the vote? What was the vote?
That's what we're saying.
We defeated a proposal.
Marty, what was the vote? I thought we have 8
4 to 3.
people.
Right, so we're
people.
saying,
Chuck.
the vote was whether or not to
Chuck
impose
didn't-
a rule, whether that's a
Chuck's not in.
compromise or not.
Yes.
So we really have kind of
Okay,
7.
so vote to impose rule,
And it
Failed.
It failed.
and then, but,
Put the names in.
oh, God, okay.
The three of us, and then the.
All right,
And the
so.
four there, that's all.
Next item is a survey,
The yays.
and I'll say 2 things about the survey, and I like, it was yellow, now it's red. Okay, to Steve, just wanna note, if you wanna go over my responses, I sent them out to you. I'm, word ambiguous, is that right? I feel a little bit, contradictory, that's the word of mine. Whereas I have problems with how it's been used, and yet I did a survey. I don't want to put up on the screen the results. What I did is I went to the, all the minutes that are available, and I marked down all the people who are identified as receiving EC, options. And it was not as terrible as I thought. In fact, most committees don't even have a request. Their minutes do not reflect anyone who asked for it and received it. So, while I think it's problematic, the fact is I've used it look at my sheet, either 2 or 3 times for myself. So how can I be against something that I've used? Where it's not ambiguity, where it is
Ambivalence.
contradictory, and I'll stick with ambivalence.
Could I make a,
Who's there?
remark on that?
Oh, Chuck is here, too. He didn't
Can I
vote.
make my remark?
He abstained.
Well, he doesn't have EC, he was here last, right?
In terms of, the
You're right.
I have not used it since that time I was in Brooklyn. But I did have it, a problem, for the, not the last one, but the one before that, for the general, meeting. And tried to get someone to allow me to be on Zoom. And the day of the meeting, there was no one available. I emailed, I called, and there was no way to do it. I ended up being on, Zoom and not being counted. So I think that something has to be adjusted on EC, because that will come up again tomorrow night. because I am not able to get a ride, and there's no way that I can take a bus. I can't walk that well, and therefore I need it. I haven't asked for it yet, but it's the day of tomorrow, and I know I'm not gonna find anybody. So, judging from what happened before. So, maybe I'll be wrong, maybe I will find somebody, but basically, we made a definite decision that it had to be done before 12 o'clock the day of the meeting, and if no one is available, what does one do? Don't come?
For clarity, when no one is available, who's that? Someone in the office, someone in the committee?
I tried the chair.
Mm,
And
mhm.
there's
No one was available to
nobody
grant
got
you
back to me,
EC.
Then I finally, spoke to Julie, and she said, not that day, afterwards, and she said, well, the day of the meeting, we're very busy. Well, if that's the case, then we have to change that regulation.
We sent an email and then the date is stamped
I
on the
did.
email. Oh, okay, and you just were
That's
waiting
no
to hear
response.
back, I see.
Okay, so then, are we just,
Can I
would it
respond?
be, go ahead, Julie.
I remember that day, Sylvia. It was a big meeting, and
This is
yeah.
the place where I feel it should be brought up.
Julie?
Okay, so on that request came after 12 noon, the day of the meeting. And after 12 noon, the day of the meeting, it's not granted. So I'm not looking at my emails after 12 noon, the day of the meeting, to respond back to anyone. You didn't contact us until I think maybe about 3 o'clock in the afternoon that day. It wasn't before 12 noon. Anyone who contacts the office or myself before 12 noon, we get the messages.
I have to say, Julie, that you don't know what it was that I was doing to ask for the EC because no one got back to me. You cannot assume that the person is going to have whatever arrangement or whatever the situation is happen by 12 o'clock. Actually, it happened a little after, but that doesn't mean that I can't be spoken to.
One of the reasons that, if I can jump in, one of the reasons that,
I just wanna know, I'm gonna put this on the agenda for next month, because I think we have other things to discuss. This is important, and evaluating the process is worth focusing on. But I'd like to move the agenda at this point, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
But as a compromise, perhaps it's, because I see that you lost time, like, reaching the chair, right? And then you reached out to Julie. So it's just like, perhaps, Julie, you need to get copied on all the ECs, so they get acknowledged before noon.
No, she emailed me directly, and the office contacts me as soon as they get an email. Sylvia, I don't believe you emailed the board office before 12 noon. Did
Again, I
you?
wanna table this.
So my situation was, Julie, that I'm not trying to make this a bigger issue. I think that it is an issue that we should address. My, problem that arose after 12 o'clock.
Right, and we can't do
Therefore,
anything
I
after
could not
that.
have called before 12, but I had a legitimate reason.
I'm gonna table this discussion and cut it here.
all EC discussion.
No,
Okay.
EC is a discussion,
Okay.
but the process
Right.
we'll talk about
Right.
next month on the agenda.
So,
Okay,
Mark,
then-
I think you know the answer to this. The responses from committee chairs were not overwhelming. Rosemary responded in brief, you responded in long form, and Julie responded as chair based on her experience. And that was it.
Didn't respond because I had no situation this year.
Rosemary, I'm sorry, I mean,
The purpose of the survey was to just.
Yeah. was to find out how much the system was being utilized, whether it was being utilized in an even-handed manner, whether people were struggling with what the heck constitutes an extraordinary circumstance. For example, the whole definition is something unexpected that you couldn't control at the last minute. A noon deadline, and no criticism intended of anyone, we made that the rule. But a noon, for practical reasons, but it cuts completely against the idea of an unexpected occurrence. So, you know, that was the reason was to see how much it was being used, how it was being applied, and some sub-questions like, if you granted as a committee chair or a board chair, if you granted someone EC status, did they actually show up on Zoom? And that was roughly 50% of the time, which means half the time, people didn't show up anyway.
Anyway,
Right. And, you know, if you listen to Julie, you know, as an example, and it's only one example, but we got a very small response rate, it is an administrative burden to take on, to start fielding these things. So, anyway, you asked what the purpose of the survey was.
So I guess my thought, listening to, coming together with the questionnaire to go to everybody, I thought it was there so a decision could be made, we're gonna scrap this whole, is it worth it at all?
I'm sorry, yeah.
To me, it was a simple question. Now, understand, a lot goes into the decision, but it was a simple question. I didn't think it was, let's see if there's something wrong with it that we can fix and make it better. That,
They were both.
they're both there?
When we first adopted the procedures,
I thought it was to come to a yes or a no, are we gonna continue?
when we first adopted the procedures, we were operating within the confines of the law. It set certain possibilities and said no to certain things, like you can't, if you don't get special status, you can't vote on Zoom. And one of the questions that the committee dealt with was, how specific can we get about what EC is? And the decision was, let's just track statute. And then let's see how it gets used, and maybe we'll come up with more reasons later, notwithstanding some people had opinions. So that's one of the things that could come out of this.
Direct answer is, I did that survey, I don't wanna flash it here, but most committees have not authorized any, EC participation.
I only know the committees I'm on, and it's a candy jar at, health hospitals.
We had a couple.
Anyone who wants it can say so on the spot. 12 noon be damned. I'm just saying, that's what's happened.
Understood.
Now you wanna move forward, I just,
Want people to contemplate for next month.
I think we should get rid of EC altogether. Miss a couple of meetings, so what? You've always missed a couple of meetings.
Invariably, when we met in public. Zoom was a technology that we needed during the pandemic. Now the rules, have changed again. I like the Zoom so the community can observe what's going on and maybe participate. But in terms of board member participation, you should show up. If you miss a meeting or three, okay.
You missed.
No, my concern would be meeting quorum, right? Because at least
Understood.
if the person can participate
But
with
it doesn't affect
EC.
quorum.
Yeah, but then we have, say all of a sudden people have, extreme circumstances, and then how about the people that do show up, take out the time, take a cab, say this, try to be in person, and then half the committee's not even here? Like, it'd be nice to know that half the committee's not gonna be here before, at noon.
No one ever knows that.
You
No one
know?
ever knows that, ever, unless someone.
EC doesn't affect quorum.
But anyway, can we,
No, I think that's a good point. I think David makes it,
Quorum.
no,
If you're not here, you don't count for the quorum.
You don't
Well,
count
yeah,
for
it-
quorum.
that's the way.
Well,
it
yeah,
goes.
well, yeah, I
If you
mean,
have EC, you
does,
would.
EC
You have
does
EC.
not,
No,
no,
no.
EC does not
No, that
help
was an
quorum.
English language problem. When you say it doesn't affect quorum, what you can mean two things. What David was saying is, whether you are granted EC or whether EC is even available in the world does not affect quorum, because you can't count for quorum under the statute.
Correct.
Right. And a different way of using the word, does it affect quorum, is, does it lure people from attending in person in favor of being able to participate and vote, but not serve as a quorum by Zoom? I mean, my view, which is not based on reading the minutes of the meetings in the fall, which Marty did, my view is that not everyone necessarily is dutiful and puts it in the minutes if they use it. That's one thing, so it may not be complete. And I really am with David. I don't believe it has an effect on a quorum in the sense that if someone were thinking about going to the meeting, and all they really wanted to do was not to be absent, they wanted to at least pay attention, they wanted to know what was going on, that's available to them on Zoom. We're not changing that at all, because that's like, you know, we can't roll the presses back. If it's a committee meeting where you're meeting here and you can do it, why not? And that's fine. That just is a hybrid meeting. That's just using technology. No different than recording the meeting. So I think that Zoom is an advantage. I think it brings more community members to committees and to the board meeting. By community members, I mean with small c, small m. I think that it gives people who can't make the meeting an opportunity, forget about voting or quorum, to pay attention.
Right.
And at a small meeting, they might be able to
That's not
participate.
a discussion at all. Telecommunication aspect that still exists.
I know, I want to, but my view is that it will still exist. You're not throwing that away, and I want people to understand that. If you get rid of EC, you have all the benefits of the technology of people being able to tune in. But if you can't, but you don't, if you eliminate EC, you eliminate this extraordinary gray area where someone's reason is a good reason, someone's reason isn't a good reason, statute doesn't help you at all, and so it causes an administrative burden. No one really knows what it is. And as David says, if you can attend the meeting in person, great. If you can't, so you don't get to vote.
That's it.
Big deal. That's the way it always was. Why is it different now?
So the bottom line is I know what David.
Sayonara.
Sayonara, and get rid of it.
Okay, Rosemary has a business.
That's exactly when, I wasn't articulate enough. I thought that's what this was supposed to be about, to come to the conclusion, should we throw out EC or shouldn't we? I really thought it was that simple question that was facing us, and I completely agree with you and I agree with David. Just do away with it. That's what,
Other people may not agree with that.
that's right, that's exactly right. But I'm agreeing with the two of you.
Now that I have clarity that it's really just an extension of the opportunity to vote without being at the meeting, I understand that, I agree that it really just doesn't do much.
It doesn't enhance quorum.
Yeah.
Really quickly, and this is very exceptional, but I'm on the youth committee, and one of the things that came up last week was the fact that we don't have any youth members, meaning like anyone under 18 on the board. And ideally, we'd like to have at least one person, because the youth committee doesn't, that part of the public, we're not really representing them. But the issue has been, from my understanding, is that it's hard to recruit youth members because most of our meetings throughout the year are in the dark. And parents are concerned about having, especially with the full board meeting that goes until 9:30, 10, coming back. So there was that question of, could they be granted EC status?
But realistically,
You care more about the youngsters'
vote or the youngster's opinion?
I mean, I would say opinion.
Okay.
that's the
They could
point.
still be
On Zoom.
They could still participate in Zoom, be a part of the conversation,
Right,
and just
right.
not vote, so.
Yeah.
The only one who hasn't spoken, Sylvia? Sorry for your concern.
It's like, I spoke.
Don't talk. Don't
I
talk.
already spoke. So get rid of EC, yeah.
Do you think EC should exist or not exist?
I don't think it should exist the way it is now. There are too many, doubtful things, and they have come up since we sat down originally, and I think either it has to be scrapped, or we have to look at it more carefully and adjust it the way things are developing.
Okay, before I
Take the poll, just want to make one point, and that is, if we were 100% convinced we should get rid of it, if I went to the board probably next month and said, we're recommending elimination of it, it requires a board vote. So I think it would be a sale process before taking the vote. Why? But, having said that, I would like to retain EC. All those hands, okay?
And it's present for?
Even though Chuck may not be able to vote, I would be interested in his view as well as Julie's.
Chucky Chucky.
If you were saying that, if you were saying that
Would
get
you
rid of
please,
EC,
Would
if you
you
were
first
saying,
please put your camera on?
I'm on. Oh, I'm sorry,
you're not.
Camera.
I'm sorry.
Now you are. Hi, bro.
I've been here for quite a while. I apologize. If you're saying get rid of EC, is get rid of the executive committee, that's one issue. I would agree with that. It's just a repetition and regurgitation. And Rosemary and Marty have heard me say that for at least 15, 20 years. No, I think the excused absence serves a purpose in terms of land use. I know going in by 12 noon that I am going to have a quorum or I'm not going to have a quorum, and I'm going to have to pick up the phone and see if I can persuade somebody to attend. That's one purpose. It may be the only purpose, but it's the one purpose I focus on.
It's a fair point that, we discussed earlier, that, I think it's incumbent upon committee members and board members to identify to the respective chairs, when they cannot make it.
I have,
With as much advance notice as possible.
I have always done that, or I've tried to always do that. I suspect that that is something which is rarely done as a percentage matter.
It's being done less and less.
The board and say, I'm not gonna be able to make the board meeting this week. I did it 2 weeks ago for this board meeting because I was gonna have a conflict. But that, so to Chuck's point, I think if you have 10 members on your committee and 3 people know that they're not coming and that's just it, but they haven't notified you, and 3 people request EC, you still don't have all the information because 3 people aren't coming and you don't know. No interest in EC. They're just not coming.
Actually, no interest in EC is a good point. They don't care.
Right.
They're not communicating because they don't care to
It's
see.
not a requirement that
Right.
you contact one way or the other.
The
Also
courtesy.
within the EC environment, right?
And there's nothing wrong with our,
Underscoring that, for good orderly conduct of meetings, it's incumbent upon
committee members and board
board members to advise their chairs of any expected absence at all.
Statement I will make tomorrow night.
okay?
I think we were unanimous in the sense that EC,
Little value.
An idea whose time has passed.
One last point, because we're talking about how you sell it, if that's the committee's, the sense of the committee. I think one other thing that happens, and I think it's less an issue for committees, which tend to be smaller, I don't think our ability to ask Chuck for his view or his vote, if he was EC, is so difficult in an environment like this. But when EC is used and freely given, as it has been for board meetings, it sets up a situation like we had, if I'm remembering correctly, at the last board meeting, or was it the one before? Where we had conflicting resolutions. That was, everyone I've spoken to agrees that that was just impossible. An impossible environment to get anything done, and to have people know what was happening. And so, I think that if out of 44 people, or whatever we've got on the board, if 7 people are encouraged to do EC, and they give any reason at all under the sun, and they do it before noon, and then we have to try to get their votes remotely with no microphones, I think it causes a real problem for board meetings, full boards.
the issue of microphones was raised at the executive meeting. I think you're addressing it in some way.
Owl Labs. To Steve's point, it also creates for much more division between the room and the Zoom. Much more complicated.
It's not a cohesive group, period.
Right.
Okay, so we did this.
I'm just gonna just to finalize, bless you for going through all of these. Is there anything in the answers that you got that could also go to the argument EC should go? Was there anything that, I mean, the survey was done, anything that comes from the survey that would?
No, because
okay.
David was against it, I didn't survey myself. I think Julie was generally felt that she could handle it for the board meeting in terms of granting it, but not the result of what happens at the meeting, if I can speak for you, Julie. And I think Marty was inclined against having it because it was an administrative hassle, at least with the time you first filled out the survey. And I think that's about all I got.
Okay, well,
I changed my mind. Remember, I took the survey twice, The first one, I was all for it. And then after about 2 months of chairing and doing it on Zoom, when I did the second survey, I said I changed my mind. Zoom should go, except for the people who have the medical reasons. We have 2 people who are medically inclined who will never come out. And I think Jillian has a good point too for a young person. But at first I was for it, and now I'm totally against it, except for the medical people. And I like Jillian's suggestions for the youth.
Against the EC, right?
Yes,
Okay, because you said Zoom. Very good.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
I'm sorry, I meant EC.
Zoom stays. Moving on, so I think we've solved this bigger problem we have in the future, but solve this. This is another thing I'm beating to death, and it's not finished. We do have a code of conduct. The borough president has a code of conduct. The question I keep asking is, how do we reinforce it? Is it announced before a board meeting? Is it put on the public notice? Or we just hope people read it at some point in their life and it's done? I was in the emergency room at Montefiore, and this just struck me as on time. So, it's right to the gut, that's it.
Like an old boss used to joke, the meetings will continue until morale improves.
Okay, having said that,
Well, I mean, I know that this has been on the agenda for many months. I think that we do have a code of conduct verbatim in 2 different important documents for the board. And I think that would be nothing wrong with the chair making a statement at the first 2 meetings of every year and just reading it and saying, you know, this is important and we should be functioning, this will help us function well for this year. Something like that. I realize it's only precatory and it's, you know, whatever, but I think that it would be a good idea.
moving on, topic for our guest speaker.
You okay?
Is an open question?
What is,
You okay?
Alex Hip.
Alex, yeah.
Alex, so we'll be here tomorrow night. He forwarded, the documents on the table. We sent it out by email, but I wanna make sure we had it in hand. Plain language guide for community board members. Anyone has a problem, they definitely, they should look at the guides and see if there are questions they'd like further, information about. One issue that was raised at the last board meeting, which I know Alex discussed, because I know I violated it in his presence, that, comments pro or con with respect to any elected official is really inappropriate. I mean, you didn't support that, that's not appropriate.
Just the last thing, I'm sorry.
You're unhappy that one of our 3 council members, or the president for that matter, did X, Y, or Z. This is not the place to express your concern. I know I made the comment, and I laughed, and Alex let it go by, but at the time he was involved with our meeting, I made the comment that I was pleased to learn that Richie Torres is gonna be a new congressman. And it really was, I have no problem having said it, but it really was inappropriate in terms of the guide. Any positive or negative comments relative to the elected official other than lobbying? Lobbying before an item is voted on, or expressing to our other council members how we feel about a certain issue. The issue at the last board meeting was kind of confusing. The committee, public safety, had a very strong feeling about the police and being forced to mark down, to keep records of level one, basic contacts. The committee was quite strong about that, and if you'll note that, go back over the tape, two council members who were present were very strong in favor of it. That kind of lobbying should have been done before the meeting, but we didn't find ourselves in that kind of conflict. Anyway,
Marty, the secretary of the board, I thought, raised an issue, and I can't believe I can't remember if it happened at the full board meeting or where else I could have heard it. But I just wasn't sure what the concern was, but she thought LRE should discuss it. So maybe someone had a better sense of what the secretary was concerned about.
well, she raised a concern about
Of this?
a political,
Oh, but I thought she had said that it was something which was a recurring problem, and that was where I lost the thread.
that was the issue.
Which was it? I still don't understand.
I remember it, but I don't remember the details.
It may have been.
She did not specify exactly what occurred that displeased her, or exactly what she expected LRE to take up. I thought, did you call her and find out what it was?
No, but when I wrote to Alex, I sent her a copy. And on Alex's letter, I asked him to discuss what the board can and cannot do relative to political people.
Did he write something down or just spoke to you?
In the letter, and it's, I requested he cover. I wanted her to make sure that it wasn't forgotten, and I even raised it at the executive committee.
Yes.
To make sure that she would know it wasn't forgotten, it was being pursued.
Very well done.
And if Alex doesn't raise it, then we can raise it next month when he comes to our meeting.
So it was, Marty, if I could just add at exec, when it was raised, I asked the final question. I mean, it's clear you can't say something negative about elected official. That so-and-so voted against this, and I think it's terrible. So that, a criticism, an outright criticism of elected official is not allowed, right?
Electioneering, for example, vote for
He's
Joe.
running, right. But I wanted to clarify, one can say, this issue's coming up, we hope this person votes in favor of it. This issue's coming up, we hope our council member will oppose it. That's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the conversation, hold
By
on,
the
'cause-
same token, when one of our elected officials speaks at the board, we understand this is coming up, we hope you support it.
Yeah.
That's different than being antagonistic or
Okay,
whatever.
so that's, no, so I raised that, I just for myself needed that really clarified, that that's okay for us.
When you think about it, that's like, in a sense, the essence of what the community board's function is to channel the
Exactly.
community view, unless they think it's immoral,
The decision
to
maker.
the decision maker.
That's
Right.
Whether it's the city
Mhm.
planning commission or the city council.
That's right.
Or
So I
electioneering.
think the discussion on that issue was somewhat after the fact, because the council members had all taken firm positions in that situation. Okay, I'm gonna run right through this. Sent you all, and last night, I think I sent you the last one, February 8th. I mean, some of these are ridiculous. Who the people were who made the violations, that always amazes me. And the various kinds of, penalties people had to pay. I like someone, I forget which one, benefited, I don't know, someone took a gift from the subordinates worth there it is, worth $150 approximately, and for taking that gift, they paid a $750 fine. So that was certainly worth taking a minor item. As,
Misuse this last one. What's a BPC executive? Never mind.
It's right there, Bridge Philanthropic Consulting, that's actually,
Right.
that's what that BPC is.
Okay.
a for-profit agency, and, I mean, so many of these, they work double jobs.
Right.
No, when it was difficult to obtain it,
To me,
That's the answer I was looking
They
for.
were on city time,
Yeah.
working for,
I mean, I think one of these are valuable only if we spot something that we think would be, you know, helpful to our members, but
Right.
97% of them are just, okay, that seems stupid, but they don't really help you necessarily conduct yourself.
but it does tell you that, what you might think is trivial, they don't think is trivial.
Right.
For example, I offered, didn't know being Van Cortlandt, which is me, but, I offered Alex, going out for dinner, before we come to the meeting, he laughed at me.
Well, $50.
I'm gonna go to, Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, we'll go down there in 20. Okay, so now the two big ones, I think the first one is minor compared to the second. The first one is there relevance in moving the election back 1 month so that officers are identified in May, they take over in July? There's this time where a new board, where a board chair who is leaving can have the opportunity to spend time with the new chair and, I don't like the phrase, but break them in. Have some sort of internship.
Marty, are you suggesting cutting out June and substituting May?
I'm suggesting that's the question before us.
Okay. Can you please strike out what you want to get rid of?
I don't want to do anything, I'm just very,
No, when you present stuff to us, so we understand what you're trying to do. It's helpful if you strike out the old and underscore the new.
Click on home.
Figure it out.
Marty has one hand, you're torturing him.
Yeah, David, what's going on? Oh, man, Marty, moving on, it was a suggestion.
Yeah, you don't have to do it now.
That's it. We're tabling the suggestion.
For future reference.
Thank you, David.
But Chuck,
Go.
trying to.
I think it's a mistake to move up to May, the election. I'll tell you why. It has two negative impacts. First, you've rendered the board chair a lame duck at the June meeting. And that takes one meeting out of 10 or 11 that you have during the course of the year, where you have nobody's going to really necessarily pay the kind of attention to the chair that they could or should. The second reason is the following. After an election that is sharply contested, it's a pretty damn good idea to have 2 months of things that are quieter, rather than having that at a full active meeting in June and then having the quiet. I don't see an advantage really, other than the meetings of the caucuses and of the nominating committee and the like. And I think maybe we have to revise those procedures to let them either function earlier or in a different fashion.
I have another concern, and that is probably the most cogent reason why someone is leaving is because the BP hasn't reappointed that person, in which case you don't know until August anyway.
Right.
Although it should be in July, but June. So,
Happened a couple of times.
the chairman of the health committee was a doctor who came to the meeting to learn he was no longer on the board. Nice. So I don't know that this actually has real, impact on what might take place. So unless, I like Chuck's allusion to the fact of hostility, if I got voted out, I don't wanna help the person, and if I don't know I'm leaving, no person to help. David, you had your hand.
No, just the reappointments have been pretty late the last couple of years. That's problematic.
So the item, we're not gonna ask for a resolution to amend the bylaws, and this is a dead issue. Let's go to the live one. Laura is not here. Laura's big concern, as far as I'm concerned, was the preset dates. I skipped something. Where did that come from? Laura, had a conversation with Laura. Laura thought that I was incorrect and that, no need under OML to have a meeting to discuss meeting dates. That is a purely housekeeping issue, I think that's her word, and therefore, that could be done email, phone calls, whatever. And so she contacted, Kristen O'Neill, and Kristen supported her. She gave the example that the open meetings, what do you call it, the Committee on Open Government does exactly that. A secretary puts out some dates. The members of of COG decide when they can and cannot attend, and then the meeting dates come out, they go forward.
You okay?
That's what she wrote back to Laura. As far as we're concerned, we need to establish, as we thought, several dates because of pre-announcement and meeting, just to set up dates, is not necessary. So,
I think that, I don't want to interrupt. I think he misunderstands the issue.
the question is question of giving dates, come and meet to set up the calendar for the nominating committee doesn't require notification. If you all agree, these are the following dates we can meet, and that's public notice, and people can attend, there's no reason to cancel meetings.
No, the problem, what Laura found out from open meetings is really good to know, because I think it applies to some other housekeeping details, which I think people do and have traditionally worked out. If a committee plans to do a forum, there's a lot of work involved in that, and they're not only relying on their hour-and-a-half meetings to do a forum in the community. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on, kind of offline, as it were. That's fine. The only reason to pre-schedule meetings is because the committee doesn't know who they are. So they can't schedule any meetings until after 10 days have elapsed, at least if you're going to go by the book. So this helps you in terms of being able to get some stuff done on the phone or on email. But if the committee isn't elected until day 1, that means there can be no meetings until day 11 or day 13 or 14, and that was the issue. And that's all.
To address, and you wrote up stuff, so I want to go to your stuff too. I wrote here, in our ethical guidance manual, within 5 days of the formation of the committee, certain business activities must take place. Members of the entire board have to be contacted. Yes, anyway, do you want to remain or not remain? Do you want to be considered for renomination or not? That's item 1, and having gotten that information back, then the entire board needs to be notified. Now, by definition, every seat is vacant, and you can run and apply for any one of them. What you should know, as I felt when we did this, is that if you know that Jane is no longer seeking to be chair of X, which she wants to be chair of Y, then every board member should know that if you apply for X, you're not antagonizing or running against a friend. And so my issue here, and I've raised it, this is here, that things meet day 1 and decide to have their first meeting on day 11 at their discretion, things have to happen on day 5. Right. In which case, what I'm suggesting is that at the point of the election of the new nominating committee, a convener be identified. Not because that's the chair, because that person becomes responsible, working with the office to get those letters out.
You still have to meet to decide who the convener is, so it doesn't really matter.
No. Identify conveners who works, alphabetical, what seniority, age, flip of a coin, you're the convener. You're not the board member, you're not the committee chair. You're just gonna do those activities.
Not sure what you're referring to, Marty. I mean, is this a new idea that hasn't
Yes.
been before? Well,
I'm laying it out right now.
okay.
Fine right there. Things have to happen by day 5.
Actually, things have to happen by day 1 or 1.5. That notice has to go out immediately. The 5 days are, they have to notify back in 5 days. So it's actually, the notice has to go out almost immediately. That doesn't happen 5 days later.
In 5 business days of formation, each current officer or committee chair must notify, okay.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
mean,
immediately,
right.
which again, is a problem of when they can meet, and they can't meet that day, for whatever reason. And a convener can take care of the office aspect.
The office can also do it if they're well-trained and everybody's ready to do it, but that's never been the case in the history of my experience on the board, which is why it was helpful to have someone in the nominating committee sort of take the reins and make sure that that's happening. And even that notice is sometimes faced with a gray area of when the deadline should be, if it falls on a Saturday and this and that, and it's very helpful to have the committee talking. I don't know if you want to go to my proposal? No. That's my argument for why my proposal works. My proposal is the crossing out of text. That's it. So Laura's concern, principal concern, was that by pre-scheduling meetings without giving the board office any discretion, this date, and I know Rosemary shared some of these concerns, you were scheduling 4 meetings when you only were going to use 2, which required that in most cases you were going to cancel 2 meetings, the first of which cancellation was going to have to be accomplished the very day after the board meeting, and it was a flurry of activity, and the board office wasn't going to be able to handle it easily, and in any event, the whole world was only getting like 24 hours notice that a meeting wasn't going to be used. And so I took that to heart, and my proposal would require no cancellations of any meetings, number 1. And number 2, another concern that Laura had, especially over the last few years as chair, was that these preset meetings often conflicted with standing committee meetings that were traditionally scheduled. This committee meets the 3rd Tuesday, this committee meets the 3rd Wednesday. So what I've proposed as a change in the language, unfortunately it's a little wordy, what I proposed is that the board office be given discretion to not only schedule it for any day that works in the calendar for that, meeting about, 8-9 days out, but that they could schedule it for a time that works in the schedule. And the nominating committee would just work around that and do the best that they could, but at least there would be a meeting day that they could use. And so there would be no cancellations. And actually, to be very honest, because of Zoom, leaving the quorum idea aside and even leaving voting aside, Zoom would permit 3 out of the 5 members to be in person and the other 2 to deliberate and be up to speed on what was going on without any EC. And so that meeting will happen. So it avoids the problem of pre-scheduling a meeting on a day that doesn't work or time that doesn't work. One of the meetings would be scheduled for a Thursday, and on Thursdays, traditionally, this year at least, and last, Aging met on that day on 4 o'clock, so a 7 o'clock meeting would not be a conflict. And so it avoids the need to cancel, and it avoids the forcing the board office to a meeting that conflicts with another one. And those were the big concerns.
So is this your suggestion for amending EM?
Yes, I mean, you know, this doesn't come out of my frustration with the rules. I wouldn't necessarily run back to amend the EGM again 2 or 3 years later, but because of what Laura, you know, has worked very hard to complain about this, I was trying to accommodate it while still giving the nominating committee, a chance to meet a couple times in the first 10 days.
So has everyone had a chance to read this? You want to recommend it as opposed?
Yeah, I like it.
So I'm gonna ask you at this point, and you want that crossed out. I looked at the calendar. How does it play out?
Wait, what's the top of the column, the day of the week? Did you write the day of the week in there? No.
No. I think it was important.
So what's the first column?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Friday's not really a day.
That's why, blank all the way.
Emily, Steve, can I just ask, did I read an email from Laura thanking you for, doing this and saying she agreed with it, or no? Then what, was it not a thank you? I thought she agreed with.
No, I mean, I happened to call her
Yeah.
this morning after I saw that she said she couldn't be here,
Right.
and I wanted to talk through with her whether she thought this solved the problems.
And?
It was you know, I think by the end of it, she got it, but I can't say that she's 100% supporter, but she got that some of the problems were eliminated.
Lost it. I've gotten my computer and typed up down word.
Sorry, Marty, I
Self-nominated.
interrupted your,
On the 25th, I've given a chance to figure out what I meant by cussing. And neither do I. That word got there. I'm finished. I asked the computer to read it to me. Find all kinds of errors, and I missed that one. Okay, having said that,
I don't think the board office should be able to schedule a religious holiday. I think that's wrong.
yeah. Well, it means that
It's a joke.
these days are unavailable. That's why I
This year.
That's why I crossed out CB exec. I don't know when it'll be held. Probably Thursday, but I don't know.
Notification by incumbents if they choose to be considered.
I mean, all I can say is, because this is not the easiest thing to follow, when I proposed the amendment, I actually looked at the standard calendar that we have, which is, you know, just sort of, it works for any month. Well, of course, it depends how the calendar falls, which days. But I looked at that general calendar, but also I looked at the last 7, because dates do make a difference. You know, the first week of May might or might not have Tuesday and a Wednesday, and that affects what part of the month the first board meeting is, the exec is, et cetera. And what seemed to hold generally was that board meeting on a Tuesday, days later, after the Tuesday, would be a day that either had no meeting at all traditionally, or it had aging at 4 o'clock. So that would be a clear path without any hassle for the second day after the board meeting, the board election on Tuesday. With respect to between the 6th and the 9th day, the board could schedule it, the board office could schedule it if a particular committee decided not to meet that month, schedule it for that day, or if it was a packed calendar, they could schedule it for 5 o'clock. That was the thing, that was the thought process. I just wanted to.
I'm opposed to adopt Steve's suggestion. But like this, ask for a vote. Like this, I think, there's no rush on this. We can handle this next month, so everyone get a chance to digest it.
I think that's fair. It's a lot to digest, even though it's, you know, tedious.
Is that satisfactory with everyone?
that a revolt, or is it?
Oh, no one's thrown a rock at me yet.
Okay.
To amend the AGM, that's not like doing it at consecutive
that's
meetings
not-
or anything, it's just a single,
Announcement.
it's not even a vote?
That's why I want clarity, so.
I don't remember.
trying to-
I know, I don't remember.
Table
So we just made changes to EGM, or made changes to the handbook at Julie's request.
That's different.
I can vote on this, I have no problem with
I think it went to a vote, because I think Rosemary and Laura were arguing that these should not all be taken together. There were 5 changes 3 years ago.
I know, I was against the entire bloody thing. It drove me crazy.
I think you did actually speak about it at the board meeting. I think we did vote.
It was too much. It was just too much. And now it comes back, how many years later, it's too much, it doesn't work. It was overthought.
The next item, the spreadsheet I got out to you on yesterday, in between commercials, I was able to work on it. Game had no difference to me whatsoever. It hasn't gotten out to everyone else, you all got copies yesterday. Take care of that when I get home, either tonight or tomorrow morning. Just set this up for the January meeting, but since we didn't have a January meeting, I didn't share it. Here are the committees to which our 3 representatives are assigned. And, missing one? Yes, I am. Oh.
Is the number of committees just a matter of how many committees a particular council member wants to serve on? I'm just surprised at the imbalance.
They're different positions, right? Like,
They're all city council people.
Up to the speaker.
I'm just the council assembly.
They're almost the same.
Thank you, yeah.
It looked like Erica only had like 3 or 4 committees.
Right, 2 or 3.
New task force, he's co-chair of. I have no idea what they're doing. He's got a lot of good work he could be doing. So I make a copy of this, make sure you all have it. Because it was not,
That's really great, thank you.
Thank you.
it was not, it was in the minutes for January, it was in the agenda for January. We never used it.
De Rosa has a capital R.
Yeah, it's De space La space Rosa. Even the nitty gritties. Oh, that's worse, space.
Curse it.
Okay,
Like,
that brings us to old business and new business.
use of serious before as opposed to serious.
Any thoughts, suggestions, things we should be bringing up?
I think we were short with, the topics to bring up to Alex, like, that wasn't clear. Like, at least subject titles or whatever. Or what?
The letter I wrote him, unless I go online, my, email. We're here.
Possible topics.
I've given him instructions already. Remember who I shared the letter with?
Okay, no question. I don't know where we landed with, the elections, the bylaws change, so, I don't know what we didn't actually vote on
We're
whether.
not changing the bylaws.
We just discussed it,
We just discussed that, we're leaving the date as June.
I guess, Marty, you're saying it was by, what, like a acclamation, like there was no difference of opinion about that? So, I mean, just for the minutes, that's what,
Discussion, I think we all agreed that, May made more sense, June made more sense than moving the election, and therefore there's no reason.
Chuck was the only one that actually expressed the conflict, but I forget what he was alluding to. Chuck, what was your comment regarding May not working?
My comments were twofold. One, that I believed it was a useful thing to have a cooling off period of July and August if you have a contentious election for senior office at the June meeting, at the June meeting. And the second one is you're rendering the chair, if the chair is involved, a lame, or is not, a lame duck at the June meeting, which may have important issues.
If you'd like a lengthy, and it was further discussed that, somewhat impractical, because generally speaking, the chair doesn't know they're leaving until they're not reappointed, so I forget what else I said. There's a tape.
Okay, no problem, we can give
Okay,
you.
Alex, so skip the first part.
I don't know the possible topics, so that's it, but you said
The full community board, the full community board meets on February 13th at a location that I still need to provide to you. It will be within the community board 8 area. At this point, I suggest you might address some of the major issues that appear historically to involve community board members, generically, who have crossed over into violation of the conflicts of interest rules. In the past, I have handed out the COIB Community Board synopsis of inappropriate actions that are violations. Recent concern, the issue of comments made in public meetings in support of or against certain elected officials would certainly violate COIB rules. Your addressing this would certainly be helpful. Our meetings begin at 7 p.m. Following our gallery session and reports from the precinct commander, our district manager, board chair, and other elected officials, you will be given about 15 minutes for your presentation and Q&A if time allows. Admittedly, we have had a serious time crunch at our January meeting, and there is consideration being made over the possible need to make adjustments to our meeting procedures. On February 12th, the day before the board meeting, will be my LRE meeting, and he's already told me he's coming in March. If the back-to-back presentations are problematic, you are welcome to speak at our March meeting on March 11th. These meetings are always held in the board office at 5676 on the ground floor. We begin at 7, which I had to correct, begin at 7:30. I'll seek approval of the minutes, your presentation, and Q&A would be the first item on the agenda. In our session, we'd like for you to focus on discussion on conflicts of interest as they affect board members and their interactions with community board personnel. That's my letter to him, instructions to him. Now, when he responded to me, he sent me another copy, and I think I gave it out before. I'm sure I gave it to the new members at the new members session back in October.
probably not a terrible idea after he speaks. Like this to the membership.
Oh, I thought, sent to everyone already, but I thought that if people looked at it, they might have questions arising from, what does this mean? Remember, we had a problem 2 years ago, where I just could not understand why they were jumping on a community board, 8 Manhattan member. It, had a conflict of interest and spoke, did not vote, but spoke and they declared her totally out of line and fined her. I couldn't understand why.
That was complicated, right?
It was complicated, because she was an employee for the person, and she insisted on being an advocate.
Right.
And instead of being a board member and talk about board issues, he constantly try to berate people or beat up people. You gotta support this issue, because I work there. That's different than expressing your opinion, even though you have a connection that's violated it. So there you have, I wrote Alex. I expect to see him. You know, if you have control, assuming the snow will be minimal, you know, they're closing the schools.
Are they really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my brother's from home.
Limps.
That was like 3 o'clock this afternoon.
My day, no, I'm kidding.
I have seen days, I remember Koch was crazy. Expected a rainstorm that would wash the city away. We have them now. And he closed schools for child safety, and they're in the game.
Just a point of order in terms of the amendment to the EGM. It really has to happen at the next board meeting in March, because otherwise, April will come. There won't be the change. You know, to the extent it's important or not, but it really has to happen at the next.
We meet before the executive committee meets, bring it to the executive committee, and then we'll bring it to the board. Warn them that if we had decided tonight to amend the bylaws, I was going to bring that to the board
Right.
tomorrow night. I
That would
gave them a heads up.
Right.
Didn't know what we decided. We decided not to change it. Problem. So, old business, new business.
Do you need a resolution on the, EC thing?
Get rid of it.
Anything?
The extraordinary circumstances.
I plan to raise the question tomorrow night, give them a chance to percolate, next month come back with a resolution.
My recollection, because we spent a lot of time on this a year ago, my recollection is that it would be appropriate at the May meeting to, you know, re-adopt the existing procedures or change them. It was a year ago in May that I think we did it.
When it comes to, yes, we have a resolution that gets renewed every 6 months or a year. That would be the appropriate time to make that change. But I want to give them a chance to percolate.
I think we have a set of procedures, which was one vote, but we also have that resolution that allows us to use hybrid meetings. That's the second.
What's the procedures? Drove a number of people crazy at the time.
Yep.
Have not, survived from that discussion. Survived.
So we're gonna discuss tomorrow and bring a resolution in March, or discuss tomorrow and wait till May? Just
We could draft a resolution if there's,
see what the chair wants to do.
like,
I plan to raise
Tomorrow, and
and
then,
we discussed this, and there is a unanimous belief that EC, I'll find the right words, hopefully, EC is something we ought to get rid of.
mhm.
Idea
You
time
attend
is
or
back.
don't attend, that used to happen years ago. It would seem to work. And, I'll go a little further. And that we attend now, but when the resolution comes up again in June, and I also will note I also will note the exuberance in which they responded to your survey. And I also will mention the fact that I did my own survey from using the minutes. And I find, based on what I said, very few committees have actually granted EC. Open the minutes at all zeros.
I'm not sure that, okay.
And you're presuming they're too lazy to write it down. Could be the case. In which case, they'll suffer over it now. That's their fault. I'll try to bring all those elements in and still leave enough time for Alex to speak.
I can send you a couple bullet points that are my thoughts on that.
You, I guess. Oh,
I would note,
iPhone
I've been
never
looking for
identified.
2 hours, we have no idea who that person is.
I think that's Sarah.
Huh?
I think that's
Sarah,
Sarah.
are you iPhone?
Have to allow her to unmute.
Sorry?
Sarah, are you
No, no, I
iPhone?
do, Chuck.
iPhone, identify yourself.
okay, whomever it may be, nice having you drop in on us. We took all of your comments into, consideration
Appropriately.
appropriately.
Marty, just so you
And,
know, the governor has declared a road emergency, but has not declared a state of emergency. The City of New York has declared a storm emergency and eliminated off-street opposite side parking. So they're starting to progress in the
step in
direction.
the right direction. It doesn't help me tomorrow night.
That's the question. You're gonna have terrible parking in the best of weather over there. And you're not gonna have any bans on opposite side parking. You ain't gonna
Well, that doesn't help at night, when that's off. So, step in the right direction.
Number 10 bus will be.
We may get to the point of, 10 bus. Oh, I didn't think about
You
that.
could do that. You would get the full part of your fare. Just about.
My problem is, even though it's hard to park, I can never walk from wherever I would end up parking.
You might be able to park here and just go across the street and get on the bus there.
Not with 3 inches.
And it's a one long block.
I thank you for
Not
your suggestion.
not with all that snow on the ground, you're not gonna walk.
Cover that, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
I can
please.
scan this.
Or I can call Alex
Yes,
and
please,
tell
or I
him
can take a
to
picture, if you want.
You kids.
Alex,
You scan?
It's the same.
motion to adjourn?
Especially with the,
So moved.
motion, second.
No one is going rock, so we are now adjourned at 9:08.
Presume,
Wait.